minutes, so verbal responses are limited to a maximum of 2 minutes each, with unlimited comments and questions raised in the chat, which is a command on your video screen. This session is recorded for possible use by NGO CSW New York and others. Should you not wish to be recorded, you can either leave now, turn off your video and rename it anonymous, or share your comments anonymously in the chat. And we ask to preserve bandwidth that you mute yourselves and stop your video at this time. There are a few guidelines or principles that we were asked to review before we open the session to dialogue. We welcome your comments that indicate respect for each other, building on ideas expressed and accepting the fact that we are all different with different experiences. We need to respect our differences and applaud them as building a culture of excellence, compassion, integrity, and honesty. We also need to be aware of the need to ensure confidentiality in this session, because some of you may have experienced situations that we will be talking about. We all need to be thoughtful and understanding when sharing our perspectives. The NGO CSW offers this space, valuing an intersectional approach to feminism. That means that we respect all of our diversity and acknowledge that racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, transphobia, global North domination, and other forms of oppression exist in this, our imperfect world. The NGO CSW reminds us that offensive comments related to gender, gender identity and expression, political affiliation, age, race, national or ethnic origin, immigration status, language, religion, or indigeneity are not tolerated. If that occurs, the offending party will be asked to leave or will be removed. Should you experience any form of harassment, you may report it to virtualsafety@ngocsw.org. And that email address is also in the chat. We have a bunch of other links to share with you that it will also be placed in the chat. Now, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been working in this space all of my life, and for the past 21 years, at least, at the UN as a volunteer advocate for such organizations as the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, the National Council of Women, VGIF, which is now known as Women First, the US Committee for UNIFEM, which is now known as UN Women USA, and Zonta International. I'm a former chair of the NGO CSW in New York and former first vice president for the Conference of NGOs. I've more recently been active with the Women's Human Rights Teaching, Learning, and Advocacy resource as co-peer leader with Dr. Sarita Kargas in creating the module Freedom from Violence, Stigma, and Stereotypes. Among those contributing to that module are Jean Sarson and Linda McDonald, who are with us today. And I'd like to call on them to introduce themselves. So Jean, would you please go first? Jean?
Muted, Jean.
Linda, would you like to go first?
Okay. Hi, I'm Linda McDonald from Nova Scotia, Canada. And I work with Jean Sarson. We work on non-state torture together, and we have for 28 years. We work on exposing it and raising awareness about it and lobbying to have laws. I'm also a survivor of relational violence. My father was very violent growing up, and I'm a strong advocate for us sharing our stories about violence because we can't separate our personal from the political. And the only way that we're going to get through this, because the World Health Organization says that 1 in 3 women have endured violence in their lifetime. So that means that 30% of the 165 women here today have endured some kind of violence. So if we can break those barriers and talk about it as an everyday reality, we'll really start challenging the violence that occurs in our world. That's a strong opinion that I have. Thanks.
So I guess I'll come next then. I'm Jean Sarson, and I've been a Canadian lifelong advocate around the issues of violence against women and girls. The reason being, I was born into family violence, and when my mother left at that time, when I was just a young child, it wasn't the thing that women did, it was to leave. So I grew up really learning a lot about sexism, about misogyny, about poverty, and also I became a street kid looking after a younger brother. So I feel very privileged even to this day that I made it out fine. My background is in public health nursing. So advocacy is just part of a nursing job, I guess you could say. For the last 28 years, I've been working with Linda, supporting women who have survived non-state torture perpetrated within families, organized and trafficked by their family members or a spouse. And that began in 1993. And in 1993, when Linda and I looked around, there was not even a term non-state after torture. That only developed in the year 2000. So we were 7 years ahead of the reality that women and girls are tortured within family systems and trafficked within family systems. So in 1993, there was absolutely no information. So we made it an advocacy goal and an activist goal to make sure that we had published articles, and we broke the silence. And in the last 2.5 years, we've been working on a book that will be published in May or June of this year called Women Unsilenced, a refusal to let torture traffickers win. So we feel very positive about that. As far as UN work, Linda and I have been coming to the UN since 2004, coming to this CSW. We've been to Geneva and to Vienna, trying to promote the reality that non-state torture is a human right violation that has to be acknowledged as a violation of Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So thank you, and I'm really thrilled to be here with everyone in this conversation circle.
I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the creation of the resource that I mentioned, which is what the three of us have been working on all over this throughout the summer. We were asked to coordinate this session because of that work. And it began as an idea from a group identified as the FWMAP to enhance the growth of the women's movement as a response to Beijing Plus 25. The Human Rights Teaching, Learning, and Advocacy Resource, which we refer to as the resource, is a user-friendly tool for educators and activists comprised of learning modules organized around 6 themes dealing with the most pressing challenges to women's human rights today. The goal was to create learning products from an incubation process led by scholars and activists at the UN. 50 academics, researchers, civil society leaders, and UN experts spent 6 months working in teams developing 42 teaching modules. Each theme is comprised of an overview module and up to 10 topic modules that address the key components of the theme. We could not cover every aspect of violence against women in this particular meeting, but we did address 9 areas. We hope that the tools in the resource will be used not only in women's studies, but also in environmental studies and engineering by political leaders, youth groups, philanthropists, civil society, and communications and cultural innovators. The resource is an attempt to build better understanding and new alliances, empowering existing movements through knowledge. It's published on the internet, and the link will be placed in the chat. And we hope that you'll be able to take advantage of it yourselves. So now, the business aside, it's your time to begin sharing. We have 3 polls to kick things off. 2 polls now and 1 at the end of the session. Here is the first poll. Mark your response as to what brought you here today. You have about 20 seconds.
All right, it looks like most people have voted, and the results, I can share them so you all see them. So we have 8% said survivor, 22% said work experience, and 70% said advocates.
So it looks like we're all pretty much in the advocacy area, but all of us are concerned with gender-based violence against women. In the next poll, choose what you want to talk about for the next hour. For convenience, we linked 6 of the topics covered in the resource into 3 groups. Trafficking will be covered in a separate conversation circle on March 24th if you are interested in that topic. Please choose your top choice now, and you have about 20 seconds.
All right, so it looks like everyone has pretty much voted, and here are the results. We have 23% say femicide and non-state torture, 47% intimate partner violence and domestic violence, and 29% said violence against children and child marriage.
So we were going to start with the first topic, but I think that it's going to be easier if all of you actually can open your video when you speak and unmute yourself when you speak and raise your hand to be called on. So I'm going to turn the program over to Linda, who's going to manage the opportunities for all of you to do your sharing. And remember, if you don't want to be shown on the video, you can write your responses in the chat. So you may have things that you want to say that you don't necessarily want to say in front of everybody, but you may want to make them known. Okay, so Linda, over to you.
Thanks, Leslie. So what I'm hoping is to see some hands up about the sharing that you want to do about your own experiences, your losses, your wisdom, your stories about how you worked with, I guess the priority was intimate partner violence and domestic violence. We can start there. I don't see any hands yet, but I know there's a lot of wisdom in this room. And usually in the other sessions, there's one, Catherine Clevenger Bertle. Do you want to start, Catherine? Just remember to unmute yourself. I can't hear you, Catherine. Are you able to unmute her, Devin? Oh, here we go. Hear you now?
And you can show your video as well if you wish.
I can't hear you, Catherine. Maybe we could talk to Laura and Aurenia next, and then maybe you could get your video straightened around the sound. Do you want to start, Laura?
How are you? My name is Laura. I'm a youth advocate from Venezuela. I'm founder and president of Girl of Venezuela. And my personal experience has been hearing and carrying out storytelling rounds with girls from my community, listening to their gender-based violence stories. And also I've been participating in debates about the role of women in society. And I wanted to share something that I find very uncomfortable, sad, and enraging, but also interesting. And it's how women are part of this cycle of society. And it's all connected to the fact that we can conceive children to the world, motherhood. So in recent research that I've carried out on my own, I realized that the fact of being a mother can lead to gender-based discrimination and violence. And so let me explain a little bit better this thought. But basically, when we girls are raised to become mothers, the thought that we can go to university, get a degree, get a job, but at the end of the day, we're going to become mothers. And that's kind of like, the future that awaits for all of us, or at least that's how culture and society raises us. And so when we go to the workplace, we enter the workplace, we find discrimination that is attached to that same fact that we're going to become mothers at some point. And so facts and numbers and studies show that there is a bigger wage gap between mothers and women than there is between women and men. And how this connects to gender-based violence is that when they find themselves stuck in the workplace, they are victims of this workplace discrimination, and also they face gender-based stigmas. They often are either, fired when they become mothers, or they decide to quit because they feel uncomfortable in the workplace, and they end up becoming vulnerable in their households and dependent on their male partner. And so when women become dependent on their male partner, they are in this position of vulnerability where men can use them as they want. So gender-based violence obviously doesn't have to only mean physical violence. It also means mental health violence. It also means psychological violence.
That's right,
and
Laura.
This happens a lot.
Yeah. So thank you.
Because of the fact that
I think it's been 2 minutes now, Laura.
Yeah, I know I extended myself, but
It's important though to talk about the
I want
violence
to end.
mothers endure. It is, as being a mother, women. So don't forget to put your hand down after, and it's a little button on the bottom for anybody that doesn't, on the reactions. I see lots of people with their hands up though, so I think we're getting good at using hands. So the next woman is Oriana, if I'm saying your name right.
Yes, my name is Oriana.
Hi, Oriana.
Hello, I'm from Mexico. I am 21 years old and I'm studying international relations. So the view that I have regarding violence against women, I used to see it as a structural problem. Here in Mexico, we are facing a really high cases regarding domestic violence from the start of the pandemic, even though I did not experience that for myself. My father is not an instigator, but I have seen facing too many women around myself, and I think that sometimes we do not realize or do not have the acknowledgement to see violence more than physical violence. Is also physiological and psychological, and finances. So I think that this is a problem because us as society and even us as a women think that, oh, my husband is no punch me, so I'm not in a violent environment. So I think that we need to create more awareness about it. And since the CSW start, I was hearing the same thing: violence is silent. So we cannot fight violence if we are not talking about it and talking about our own experiences and the ways that we can suffer in it. And also, talking about violence does not mean that everyone is facing violence in the same way. Me as a woman of color and being from Mexico cannot suffer the same violence that a woman from other country or even a woman that is part of a Mayan group, for example. So we have to think about it when we are advocating, because what we can work for us does mean that it can work for everybody. And also, we always say women have much better life today than 25 years ago. Yes, many of us has improved our life, but some of us are suffering the same rates of violence and same discrimination. So I think that we need to be acknowledged of that.
You are.
This is what
That's great. That's great. I really appreciate you saying that the violence isn't always obvious and we have to be talking about it. So you're doing a great job of doing that. Thank you so much. Now, Catherine, and I also have Dr. Kirshama Koka. So Catherine, are you able to unmute yourself? No, you disappeared on me, Catherine. Are you there? Oh, I can, okay, can you talk now, Catherine? Oh, it's hard to get those. Sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, Dr. Kirshama Koka, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. All I want to say is it's important that people get education and that violence, either mental or physical, does not stop girls or boys from getting an education and liberating themselves or taking themselves forward. So all that we do, raising voices, encouraging people, I really think should be focused on teamwork. So that if we strengthen teams and families and mothers, we will encourage more education amongst all, both girls and boys. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you. Teamwork is very important. We can't do this alone, can we? No. Now I have Shanti Baker and Dorothy Halley. So Shanti, can you go next?
Sure. Hi. I am from the United States. I grew up all around the world in the military. My father was in the service. So I was blessed to grow up in a multicultural world and a very safe world post-World War II, or so it seemed on Army bases. My mother also was an Army brat, so she grew up in a relatively safe environment. But my daughter was murdered in Oakland in 2012. And I was brought into the whole underbelly of the world of violence and violence of men against women. And even though people say it does, unfortunately, I don't think love conquers all. And I agree that we need to use teamwork to teach our children how to defend themselves, self-defense for boys and girls, communication skills for boys and girls, boundary skills, role-playing skills, many things for our young children, for them to teach their families. And yes, for us not to be silent and not to accept our media and our television that portrays so many women as victims of violence by men. And there's a lot we have to do. And so I want to be positive. I want us to get beyond our differences and really work hard to have a safer world for everyone and a more healthy earth, and take care of our animals, do everything we can while we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanti, for having the courage to speak up about the murder of your daughter. I'm very sorry about that. And would you say we could call your daughter's murder a femicide? Does that feel right to you?
Yes.
Yes. That's the important thing, is starting to name the femicide. So thank you very much. And I'm sorry, very sorry about your daughter. So Dorothy?
Thank you. I'm Dorothy from the United States, actually, Dorothy from Kansas. So what I want to say is that my experience has been on all three levels that we were asked about. As a victim, I was raised as a Mennonite. My father spent time during World War II due to his belief that the government did not have the right to ask people to sign up. So instead of being a conscientious objector and signing up, he chose to not sign up, knowing that he would spend some time in prison. so the idea of nonviolence has hereditary roots. In spite of that, my older sister was a victim of domestic violence. And at one point, after she was able to get away from him, he abducted me out of my parents' home in the middle of the night. So that's the way that sometimes, even though a person has a very healthy childhood, we still can get victimized regarding domestic violence. Following that, I would just add that my first marriage, there certainly was, he was a Vietnam veteran and had many struggles with that and with his experiences as well. And there were things that certainly impacted me as far as feeling threatened at times, though never physically assaulted. In many ways, I'm one of the lucky ones. I saw it happening in many different aspects. I ended up, after getting my social work degree, running a domestic violence shelter for a decade. And it was at that time when we had 7 different victims from the same offender within 5 years that I realized I had to do more than providing shelter and services for victims. I had to start understanding those who batter. That's not what I wanted to do, but that's what I realized I needed to do. And from then on, I developed a typology, which goes with a much more intersectionality perspective than the white feminist perspective that was taught in the 80s and 90s. And because that typology looks at the different motives of those who batter and listening to victims, I've been able to do some work regarding those who batter and getting the word out that they're not all the same and they create different dangers under different circumstances. But the piece that I am fascinated and challenged by, I was the victims' rights coordinator for Kansas for the past 13 years and recently retired.
I'm just sorry, Dorothy, if you could wrap up. I know we all have lots to say, so I hear you, and it's important work.
So the challenge I have is, why do we now say victims? There's this movement where they have to be classified as survivors in order for us to be sensitive. I don't think that victim should be a dirty word. I think we need to reclaim it. It's not that I, as a victim, there's something wrong. It's that someone victimized me. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we have to go away from the word victim, we're sending a message to the world about what we think of victims. Thank you.
And we can be women who were victimized instead of a victim, so that it's not our identity isn't victim, it's women who were victimized, women or girls. Okay, so now I have Brescia and Jessica. Brescia, is that how you say your name? Probably not. There,
yes,
hi.
Brescia.
Brescia, okay, Brescia.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm here in Santa Barbara, California. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here advocating for women's rights, but just for women's being able to be safe and fulfill their potential. So I'm an ambassador for the Charter for Compassion Women and Girls sector. And this year we started an initiative to address violence against women. And I've heard a couple of people calling for the collaboration and for working together. And so what we came up with was the phrase a partnership. So we no longer want to visualize or experience domination or patriarchy. We want a partnership for a safe and sacred now. And what that entails is what we're trying to explore this year, and inviting people to share that exploration with us. I wanted to just say that I'm here as an artist. I am the founder of the Women's Woven Voices Project, and several other people have already mentioned how important it is for women to get their stories out and to talk about their experiences. And so the Women's Woven Voices Project does just that through writing, weaving, and sharing your stories. Behind me is a panel with about 25 women's stories, and I have been building a tapestry from collecting woven stories from people around the world. I have about 700, and I'm creating a piece of artwork that can then be displayed to stimulate conversation and action towards everything that we're talking about today. So I do have a booth in the virtual exhibit booth here for the NGO CSW. So if that sparks anyone's interest, please come by and take a visit. I value so much all of the different ways that we come at this these issues and to try to create solutions. And as an artist, this is just my way of helping women to tell their stories and to share their stories and to bring awareness. So
you want to put your link in the chat, Risha, around
I will.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica. Thank you, Risha.
Hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and to connect with you all. My name's Jessica, and I'm new here. This is my first time attending an event like this, but I survived. I'm a survivor. I survived rape and sexual assault, and also child trafficking when I was a kid internationally. And now I'm looking to try to dedicate my life and career to building solutions. Particularly, I'm really focused on, my background is in technology and translation. So I'm working now on building an application to help migrants who don't speak the language of where they are looking for solutions and help. Because of that intersectional vulnerability, it can be really, really difficult. I experienced this trying to go to the police to report what had happened to me in a language that I didn't speak. And it was just almost impossible to get the information and education I needed. I didn't understand how to communicate what had happened to me. And so basically that's the goal of my project, is to create a resource that provides translation to explain the differences in what constitutes sexual violence, how you can get local resources, and how you can translate these really complex topics. That's all I really wanted to share, is just I hope that we keep in mind that this is a great event in English, but not everyone speaks English. And as we're considering these solutions, it's good to think about intersectional vulnerability. And I'll leave my email in the chat in case. I'd love support from anyone who has experience with translation or is willing to be interviewed for my research. That would be so helpful. But love to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your work, Jessica. After your life, and you've moved forward to help other victims and survivors. So it's tremendous. All right, so now we have, these are all such powerful stories, aren't they? Sandy Bell and Tolin Nguyen. So Sandy, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'm happy to. I just wanted to say that I grew up in a violent household. My father beat my mother up regularly, and it didn't have the same emotional impact on me that it did have on my siblings. My sister used to wake up in the middle of the night, which she would still have asleep really, and she would go walk around the house and screaming and trying to get out the front door and get away, which had an impact on me because it just broke my heart to see her so distressed all the time. I mean, she was really young when this was happening, like 3 or 4 years old. I do have to say, though, that I consider myself fortunate in that my father, as I got older, would try to attack me as well, but my mother would never allow it. She always would shield me from him, I mean, with her own body. So it was difficult for me for a long time to understand, I can't think of what they call it now, abused wife syndrome, because my mother didn't exhibit that in that she did protect us. Unfortunately, what happened though, when I got married the first time, I married someone just like him, just like my father. But fortunately, because of the way my mother had reacted to my father, it gave me the strength to get out. I mean, the first time I saw him do something to abuse one of my children, that was just the end for me. And I was able to get out. And as someone talked about earlier about education, you know, I was able to get some education and therefore able to get a decent job for myself and take care of myself and my children. And so that's how I got into being an advocate, was that and lots of other experiences in my early life. And I'm very involved with the National Organization for Women in the United States and have been for about 30 years. And I just hope that the day will come when we can do away with violence, all violence, but especially violence against women and children.
Absolutely, Sandy. Another story about how your mother's role modeling helped you later on. Powerful. I missed Delphine, I think. I'm sorry. So we can have Antolin and then Delphine after that.
Hi, so my name is Antolin. I'm a 17-year-old youth activist from the United States. I've worked with a lot of domestic violence shelters within my area, and I'm here on behalf of Girl Scouts of the United States as an advocate. So I wanted to really speak from my own personal experiences and also around the gender-based violence against girls specifically, because it disproportionately affects us, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really important for us to, of course, create community within one another and have girls have these very important conversations at a very, very young age. You know, for a long time, I guess I could consider myself a survivor, and I still struggle to even, you know, call myself that, because it brings such, you know, it's very scary to me to, like, you know, finally admit that that happened to me. I really struggle with that myself, but we have to get girls to recognize this violence. Like, we have to teach them what is this violence and how to recognize it. And I know Oriana mentioned it a little bit, and I just want to build off that idea, how it's so incredibly important for girls specifically. I also really wanted to address how, you know, as an Asian woman, how there's so many very negative cultural norms around domestic violence. I think there is a narrative that is very harmful to girls specifically. And it's like, oh, we need to serve the family. We need to, you know, our family is very important. We have to do our best to take care of the children, our younger siblings. We have to support our parents in terms of, you know, a lot of domestic housework. And we also have to support them economically because, you know, that's very difficult in a time such as now during a worldwide pandemic. And so because of that, I felt myself being very tied to my family, and that prevented me from really truly recognizing the violence that I had experienced against one of my own family members. And so I think as a girl myself, I just want to speak to other girls and hopefully empower everybody to create change, and of course to, you know, create community. I think that's so important to me, and making everybody feel welcome, and really listening to stories of survivors, and knowing when is right to, of course, give advice or offer help, or just be there and just to listen. I think that's the best way that we can support girls. And I'm so incredibly thankful for the opportunity to speak. So thank you.
We're thankful for you speaking, Antolin. And I must tell you, it gets easier the more you speak, so that you know that. Delphine.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I am Delphine from Cameroon. I'm a nurse midwife. I am an HIV adherence counselor, and currently I'm an NPH student. So as an adherence counselor, I realized that women were facing a lot of gender-based violence from home right up to where they work. And in fact, I felt really bad because some of these women were treated like animals, even by their husbands. They were rejected because of their HIV status. They were even abandoned with the children that were positive, and it was all their fault. And women are always at the trouble end, let me put it that way, because when they are sick, women find themselves more in the health facility. So most often they are the ones who will be tested, who will have the positive results. The men too, sometimes they are even living with the same condition, but because they don't go to the hospital frequently, they don't take the children for healthcare services and all of that. So I want to say that this gender-based violence is something that is really, really troubling. And I felt really bad because there were times that I had to even reach out to some of the men. But I realized, even as a counselor, it was not easy. And some of them would tell you, all right, don't come to my house again. I don't want to see you around here. And then I imagine that even as a counselor who is there to help, they don't want to listen to you or to even get anything good from you. What will that, and at times you even go and it becomes a trouble at home because they will now maybe spank the woman for having brought a third party, for having called a lady to come, and it is trouble. And with all of that, I think that we as a team who are fighting, who are working towards this, we have a role to play. Yes, because this thing about gender inequality, I want to believe that it begins right from when you start raising your children at home. We need to be able to make our boys, our male children understand that these are your sisters and you're equal, because it is difficult when they are all grown. Sometimes it becomes very difficult. As they say, it is difficult to bend a tree that is already strong. So if we start it from childhood to make them understand that you are equal, it is going to help. And as women, we should be out there to also support fellow women, because sometimes a woman's trouble does not even mean anything to another woman. We leave them. We don't want to. If you've ever worked in a place where a woman is the boss, the woman boss is usually difficult. They don't know, they don't understand. We should learn as women to support other women. Yes, we need to give them our support. We need to listen to them. Yes.
Thank you, Delphine.
We have a lot more to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you and what a powerful metaphor. You can't bend a tree that's already grown to start when they're young. I love that metaphor. It's so important. Thank you. So now can we speak to Vanessa and is it Zwin Lee? Vanessa, can you start next? And
hello, good day, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm from New York City. I grew up in a household where my father was the breadwinner and the head of household in every way, including over my mom. But at the same time, I grew up with my dad, who spoke to me every day or every weekend at length about being an independent woman. So I did grow up with a strong background, and I grew up on both sides of seeing what violence is like, and experiencing it through my mom and my dad, usually. But I think that, one of the factors, I'm also a mentor and an advocate for women. I sit on different platforms and I speak to women, all ages, right? Both young, old, teenagers. And I think that one factor that we seem to forget is that we as women have not accepted the fact that it's okay not to be okay. Right? And I think that once we acknowledge that we have been hurt in one way or another, it's only then that the healing or the helping can take place, where we can ponder solutions on how to help ourselves or help another female. Like Delphine said, I solely agree, is that, you know, we must encourage and remind each other that it's okay to speak out when we are hurt. And we have to be able to know and identify that when a woman comes to us and say that they are hurt or something has happened, we have to be able to lend an ear or shoulder or hand, whatever it is, to make sure that we help create that safe space for that female in the event that a safe space or safe haven is not immediately available. That's the only way that we can help to encourage more women to speak up when something happens to them. We're the strongest things on earth, right? We're moms, we're sisters, we're bosses, we're you know, we're everything, nurturers, we're everything. We're the backbone to society.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one thing that we have to do is that when we're hurt, we have to identify and have to say that we're hurt. And that's the least thing that we do. So that's, I just wanted to take time to share that.
That's powerful.
Thank you for creating this platform.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, we have to care about each other, don't we? And admit that we need care ourselves.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, Win Lee.
Hi. Hi. I know my name is not that easy to pronounce.
How is it pronounced?
It's Jiwin.
Jiwin. Okay, sorry.
Don't worry about it. So I'm really happy to be here, and it's really great that we're talking about gender-based violence today. I didn't really realize it was a problem until I went to college, and I just realized all different kind of form of gender-based violence actually happened to me before. I was stalking by my own father for 10 years. I had a stalker who tried to break into my window for like the whole year. I was almost raped and killed when I was traveling in Sudan. And I had a lot of cyber violence as well from internet, when people were calling me basically a whore or prostitute or anything just because of me being a solo female traveler in Asia, or let's say in China in general. And so at the end of the last year, I launched a platform against gender-based violence in China, because I realized when people talk about gender-based violence, a lot of people would think like, oh, I was not hurt, I was not beaten by someone, so I didn't experience any kind of violence. But the truth is, after I talked to so many people, and they were just like, oh, I didn't even realize I was actually violated. Violated, thank you. So I talked to a lot of them. They were saying, oh, I didn't realize this kind of psychological violence can be one form as well. I didn't realize that this kind of catcalling on the street are violence as well. And in the end, we started to collect stories from all the people, and more people decided to speak up because they didn't realize that they have been through any kind of violence before. So for me, I think it's just really important for us to all speak up about our stories. I know it's really hard to talk about things that we actually experienced, but it's just like Me Too movement. Without speaking up, a lot of people would thought that, oh, sexual harassment is not something that happen every day. But it's the same with all form of gender-based violence, and not just only violence against men, against women and girls, but also against men, because of this toxic masculinity that also men are violated against when it comes to gender-based violence. And that's why we all need to speak up to tell people, hey, listen, this is also a form of gender-based violence, and we need to stop it now.
That's right. Your voice is important. Your voice is important, very important. And it's important that young women are learning this, because it's going to make the world a lot safer. Before we go to the next group, I just wanted to notice some things in the chat. There was a talk about how important education is, Indigenous women and the violence that they endure. One woman talked about her mother being murdered. There was comments about strangulation and how common strangulation is now. Young women are enduring it much more because of the pornography. One woman identified as a non-state torture survivor, and the role of men and boys. So there's really fruitful comments in the chat as well. Now, do you want to talk, Joan Washington, and then Valerie Kawina?
Can
Hi,
you see me?
Joan.
Hi, my name is Joanne Washington, and I'm in Detroit, Michigan. I am with the American Human Rights Council. Thank you for putting on this wonderful forum. I want to talk about something that has been a boogeyman, a monster in my own family.
Right.
It was 7 of us, 7 kids. 70% of the kids in my family were raped, both male and female, including me.
Yeah.
So it really leaves a psychological barrier in your brain. Your family tells you, you better not tell anybody. In the Black family, what stayed in what went on in your family, better stayed in your family. And this had a huge psychological barrier on me growing up until I went to college. Because my family and my in-laws, the neighborhood, told me that I was tainted because I was light-skinned. It was my fault. I was a whore, and I would never accomplish anything in my life. And also was in my family, I had a sister. She had disability. She was sex trafficked for years, and we never knew about it. She in turn raped my nephew, 4 years old.
Right.
So if we don't break the chain, if we don't say, forget it, you know, it's not an embarrassment to me. We got to talk about it. We got to train up a child. We got to train our young people. We have to say, it happened. I am not 7 years old anymore. I am a grown grandma. I have the pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to go to Saudi Arabia, work with US Embassy, putting together educational programs. I was in South Africa working with PEPFAR, working with US Embassy, working with HIV and women's programs. I was in Yemen working with the US Embassy, working in education. I was in Toulouse, France, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. God has really blessed me. I'm going to say that because I didn't stay in that one place. I didn't stay there.
Look what you did.
Let people tell me.
That's right. You didn't believe lies.
Who I was. I grew into who I am. I let that stuff go, but I haven't forgot about it. And that is why we are working here in Detroit, here with different type of communities to talk about violence, but not only to talk about it, but to educate, to break that generational chain that it's your fault. It is not your fault. And with people like you and all these folks on this wonderful forum, we can get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Look at all the power that's in this session from all the women that have gone, you know, beyond the violence and are speaking. Isn't this tremendous? Okay, Valerie, you're next. Lovely to meet you, Valerie.
Hello. Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm here as a delegate for Women First. And I'd say I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. And I've been brought up in one of the biggest slums, one of the biggest urban slums in Africa, which is Kibera. And I'd say in Kibera, violence against women has been kind of normalized because this is something we see and experience every single day. Take an example, if you need to go somewhere, you need to board a matatu. A matatu is the most common local transport. And from the way women who are going to board a matatu are approached, there's a very big difference as to how the conductors approach women as compared to how they approach men. You'll find that most women are grabbed, and most of the time they're forced to board a matatu that you don't even want to board. But looking at your workspace, you're told to always dress decently. It's like you're the one person who has to protect yourself from being a victim of violence. So like, I just hope and pray that we slowly move from being victims to being survivors to being champions of violence. And through this, we are going to really go far, and we are going to see change in our community, especially in the urban slum. I want for men out there, because I say men because most victims I see are women. and their perpetrators are mostly men. So I only pray that the men out there are able to shift their mentality and not see women as easy targets, for them to be groped, for them to be catcalled, for them to be grabbed each and every time. Simply because we are physically weaker doesn't mean we need to experience all the physical violence that we go through as women. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. And you're a champion. You're a champion.
Thank you.
Okay, so now there's Suze and Emma. Hi, Suze.
Hi, thank you everyone, and it's great to be here and listening to all of your stories, and thank you everyone for your advocacy work. I'm Suze. I'm from Mobility International USA, and we are focusing on working with women with disabilities. And I just wanted to talk briefly about women with disabilities and violence. They're more likely to experience violence than non-disabled women, and they're also less likely to receive and access services. And that's because information is not accessible. There's not sign language interpreters. There's no ramps into the shelters, things like that. So the work that we're doing around the world is partnering with women leaders with disabilities who have organizations to support them and in their countries to do creating solutions. Some of the things that they're working on are partnering with women's shelters, doing training for their staff on how to be welcoming and serve women with disabilities. They're creating apps, they're creating handbooks, they're creating video, virtual awareness campaigns. So these are just some of the things we're trying to support women with disabilities to really take the lead on this and educate everyone on what needs to be done. But I just invite everyone here to consider that in your work and how you can maybe reach out to disabled women's groups and work together with them. Thank you.
And Suze, do you have any you want to put in the chat? Any links?
Sure. Yeah, I'll put a link to our project on gender-based violence.
Great. Thank you very much for your important work. Thank you. Hi, Emma.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone for sharing their amazing stories. I'm an MSW student at the University of Connecticut, and I've been doing a project on the increase of violence because of COVID. And, you know, I got in a room with a bunch of my classmates, I should say breakout room, and we were talking about our subjects, and I brought up mine. And every girl in the room had experienced gender-based violence in some form or way, including myself.
Right.
And I've always had a hard time talking about my experience because it was one of those things where I was like, did that really happen to me? Is that really, like, does that even consider it? Because I don't know, just kind of minimizing my own experience, I suppose. But when I was in high school, one of my boyfriends knew I was on the pill and decided to take a condom off without telling me. And, you know, I didn't realize until a couple years after that that was sexual assault. And it was just something I had to deal with kind of in the aftermath, like you don't realize it. And I just feel like it's important to keep telling these stories and keep connecting and kind of creating a cultural shift, because it happens at a level that we're not even aware of. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more we put it into the front lines, that people won't experience the same things that I went through and that everybody who has been through these types of things has been through. And this whole dynamic of boys will be boys and girls must suffer in silence. You know, I just think that we have to keep fighting for that cultural shift and moving into that space and taking that space up. And I don't want to like take up too much time because.
Well, you did a great job, Emma. Thank you for breaking the silence with your own voice, because every time you do, it makes a shift in the world. Thank you very much. So now we have Lana. Do you want to speak?
Good
Lana?
afternoon, everybody. Yes.
Good afternoon, Lana.
I'm from Jamaica, and I'm speaking of the work that Sistren Theatre Collective do within Jamaica and the Caribbean. We're a performing arts theatre company, and we use the performing arts as a tool to deal with DVVAW, and we create healing circles, dramatic presentation, and we also have a tool that we call safety audit tool, which we train community women to be able to identify issues that are impacting them in their community around crime and violence, DV. And we have been doing this for the last 45 years. But since COVID, the women were able to use the same safety audit tool to identify the rearing up of and the what you call now, the expansion of what COVID was doing to women who have now come under severe pressure around domestic violence and violence against women, also their children, and was able to put systems in place and work with partners like the police domestic unit and other stakeholders, their local authorities and other partners to address the issue of DV.
Tremendous work, Lena. Theater is such a powerful way to change minds and open hearts. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks.
Grace, would you like to share?
Hello, everyone. So, our discussions from the organization of Girl Guides. We have the Stop the Violence campaign, where we educate girls on gender-based violence and we advocate for them. Speaking for myself and about my country, there is the culture of silence around gender-based violence. And as I delivered the activity back to my girls, I stated, like you did here, that it was a safe space. So as we started, I explained to them what violence is and what are the kinds of violence. They started speaking out, like they experienced violence in their home, and not just one girl, but many girls aged 11 to 15. So it was really shocking for me to see that. But at the same time, I saw that they were very brave to share. So the first step is that girls know what violence is. Second step is that they know that they can reach out. They have someone to talk to. And as women, we should support each other. But because in our society, it's the women that point out and that are harmful to the women that speak out. Yeah, we should be supporting each other and supporting the survivor. And lastly, it is important to engage men and boys, because in Madagascar, our society is very patriarchal. So it is important to explain the role of power in gender-based violence. And to end gender-based violence, we should really explain to boys that power scheme to end. Yeah, so that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Grace, from Madagascar. And talking about power is crucial to understanding violence against women and girls. Ugo, probably saying it wrong. Sorry, you can correct me.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Ugo from Nigeria.
Oh, Nigeria. Yeah.
And I live in the northern part of Nigeria. And the violence I want to talk about is about the girl-child marriage. And it's very common in this part of Nigeria. You will see a girl, a baby being born, and a 50-year-old man will pay his bride price, pay the girl's bride price. And maybe it's the father's friend or so. And then from that day, once that girl turns like 7, 8 years old, they will not be sent to school, will be taken to the husband's house. And at that tender age, these girls are, the men will not consider that these girls are so tender. They will want to have carnal knowledge of them. First, they will force their manhood to a small girl. And most cases we're having in this area is the cases of vaginal fistula. They call it VSF, where urine is an abnormal opening between the bladder and the vagina, and it results to continuous passing of urine without control. And when these girls find themselves in this situation, the men will just lock them up in a room. And, you know, because of constant passing of urine, there will be a kind of smell odor around these small girls. And they suffer this at this early age. And the society is not doing anything about it. I feel so bad that I can't help. I've thought of having an advocacy with the traditional rulers, but it's quite difficult because it's their tradition and very difficult to tell people to stop their way of life. And anytime I heard about violence against women, against child and children, girl child, I feel so bad. I'm so helpless. I don't know what to do. And I want to do something because these children are really suffering. They end up ruining their lives. They don't go to school and they don't have a healthy, nobody comes to their rescue once they have this disease. So it's quite sad. And I feel like talking about it. And
it's important. Now, Naradzai, there's a woman in the UN that's working on child marriage. And she works through, she's an ambassador for Africa. So maybe if you put your email in the chat, we can connect her with you. And she works around child marriage. Child marriage is really considered a form of torture. And the stories you're talking about, the little girls, that's exactly what they're enduring, is torture. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much, Hugo. Okay, I'll watch. Okay. Do we have any more hands? I'm going to go back to Catherine again. Do you want to try again, Catherine? I haven't forgotten you. Oh, it's too bad we can't hear you, Catherine. That's too bad. Well, we know you're there and we know you want to speak. So thank you for trying. We just can't seem to hear you unless you want to put something in the chat.
I just wanted to end on the child marriage, that Zonta International has a major initiative to end child marriage in 12 countries. And we are working closely with UNICEF to make that happen. And in the United States, for those who are interested, we're working with, Zonta International is working with Freddie Reese's organization called Unchained at Last, to try to change the laws to make 18 the minimum age of marriage. Not to say that it's an easy thing in other countries to implement, because there are lots of traditional issues and cultures that need to be addressed in places where the laws don't seem to make much sense. But we are doing our best to make that happen, even in spite of the COVID situation. So hopefully that will materialize, at least in those 12 countries, and that we can work together to end child marriage, which, as you say, is a form of torture.
It is, yeah. So we have time for one more speaker. Thank you, Leslie. I see Christine, and then we'll let's go to the next part. So thank you, Christine. Can you unmute yourself? There, great.
Yes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be a part of you. Thank you to give me this opportunity to share about the violence of women, especially based on the violence of widows, the women who have lost their husband. In most African society, the practice of widow's rule is difficulty influential custom, because it's related directly for the dead, and women are afraid to refuse. They don't want to. They don't accept. They don't, excuse me, I'm French speaking. I'm just
That's
trying.
okay. That's okay. You're doing great, Christine.
So women, the fear of anthropological, psychological, social, religious values justify the oppression that widows agree to suffer without being related. Widowhood is very violent practice and is effectively done in the light of the difficulty tried of widow during the process. This is not typical in Cameroon. Yes, it's the all sub-Saharan Africa.
All sub-Saharan and Africa, widow, yes.
Yes, yes, the same is true for several other culture in Black Africa, because Black women are suffering for that. The violence linked to widow is physical, beating, psychological, blaming, humiliation of widows, moral transgression, the practice and religious conviction, and or principle of life. So
brutal. It's
yes,
very brutal, isn't it?
And particularly, personally, feel very, very sad in front of the silence of those who are supposed to protect widows, because yes, in a common law they talk about human rights, but I think definitively there is no human right in my country, especially of that category of person.
Of widows. Thank you, Christine. We'll keep fighting. We'll keep fighting for the human rights of all women. Thank you for sharing.
We are trying, but I'm not looking for real issue of that, because it's already 5 years, the CSW61, I think, I was in the United Nations. I mentioned the problem, and I think, but widows for herself now are opening their eyes.
Yeah,
yes,
that's right. It starts from the women themselves first, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Christine, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for all the wonderful sharing. I find it very moving. And now we're on to the next part of the session. Jean's going to talk about Beijing +25. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
I've been listening to the incredible stories, and I've been trying to kind of capture a tapestry, if you will, of some of the main themes which come under the Beijing Platform for Action. We have 3 that we've covered in this conversation circle: the issues of violence against women, the human rights of women, and the girl child. So we've been talking about women and girls of all ages. And some of the key points, if I had to kind of capture our voices, is how important storytelling is and has been. That if we tell our stories, we expose reality and we tell our truth. And we create a community that starts denormalizing what serial violence against women and girls is, and that we have to name the many, many forms of violence so we can educate everyone about the extensive ways in which oppression occurs. And this is one way we will gain a community of validation. So trying to capture those few words of the importance of all your storytelling. For the Beijing platform last year, Leslie, Linda, and I weren't sure if other women attending today might have reports of CSO meetings that they held. We couldn't find any, except for our own in Europe, North America, Central, and Western Asia, which Linda has already put in the chat. if you have links that you want to share so that we could learn from each other what happened at the CSO meetings. In Europe, North America, and Central and Western Asia, we developed fact sheets, and Leslie worked on the North American one, as did we, and Linda and I were part of the non-state torture fact sheet. So those are all in the chat box. And as I said, if you have some from your region, would you please share them with us? So the other thing that we wanted to do is to share that when Linda and I were in Geneva at the UN for the CSO meeting, we wanted to encourage a woman to come and express her own voice who had survived non-state torture as a child. She was born into a family that tortured and trafficked her. And listening to some of your stories, this is not a new reality, a tragic reality, but not a new one. So we supported Elizabeth from the UK to come to Geneva and also to share her art, because they had an art exhibition at the CSO in Geneva, and it was called Artivism. And some of you have talked about artivism through play and tapestry. So it was called Artivism for Gender Equality. So this was Linda's picture, Elizabeth's picture, and Linda took a little video of what this meant for Elizabeth to have her art out of the shadows shown. Linda took it on her iPhone, so it's a small video, and there's a lot of voices in the background because it was in the hall where they were looking at the art exhibition. So we'll share this video with you. I'll drag it over. You may have to turn up your sound.
The UN in Geneva, Switzerland, at the Beijing +25 review meeting. It's October the 30th, 2019. And I'm standing in front of my artwork, which has been included in an exhibition to go with the review meeting. And I'm honoured, proud, and completely amazed that my artwork has actually been included in an exhibition here right inside the UN. There are no words to describe it. I'm particularly proud because it's an artwork which reflects my surviving non-state torture through my childhood, and it stands for recognising non-state torture as a human rights violation and as a specific form of violence against women and girls, and the text at the bottom underneath the picture reflects that. And here she is walking out of the shadows like many women and girls who've been invisibilised for years and years and years. Their torture harms not known or recognised. So it says no more invisibilisation. Non-state torture is a crime, a violation of the human rights of women and girls.
So I hope that you were able to capture how proud she was and how thrilled she was to have her art there. And also to understand that healing is possible. And we have to really embrace the voices of women struggling to heal and those who have healed to give us energy to keep moving on and to change the society that we live in. So I will pass that over to the next slide, which is the last poll.
So Kayla, can you put up the last poll? This is about what we really want to move and do from here. So Kayla's going to put up a poll and see. We're going to be talking about whether we're going to share the resource, whether we're going to lobby, volunteer, advocate, or join gender equality forum action coalitions or some other tremendous thing that you're doing. So We've already talked a lot about many things, but just fill out your submission. And we'll see where we are.
All right, so it just looks like a couple more people are putting their votes in.
Great, thanks for voting, everyone.
I can end it now. It looks like almost everyone's putting their vote in, so I'll end it now.
Okay.
We have 34% of people voted for share the women is human rights teaching, learning, and advocacy resource. 9% voted for lobby my UN representative ambassador about this feminist pandemic social issue. 32% voted volunteer or advocate by sharing your experience and knowledge. 16% voted for join Generation Equality Forum, Action Coalitions, and 8% said other.
Powerful. And that's what we did today, isn't it? We spoke and advocated.
I'm really pleased to see how many people are interested in the resource. Maybe you can put that again in the chat at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I can.
And it's been really an amazing opportunity for us to be able to have this platform and to share this this chance for all of you to share what you have to share. Linda?
I'm just going to put this in the chat. And I just want to say that as hard as the times are, because we're in a backlash time globally, because so many of us have been brave enough to speak, we can't despair now. We have lots of hope, and we will succeed because we are half of the world, 51% of the world's population. And society on all levels are finally getting it that the world will evolve because of the way women are treated. It makes a difference in the country's economics, in their security, in their civilization of how we evolve. So we've got that reality out there now, and our pushing has made a difference. And we will keep pushing because you're evidence of that today. And it was a great, great honor to listen to your voices and to be part of such a tremendous opening of voice. So don't back down, speak up. Thank you very much.